One of the most common things that I hear from my patients who are in their even mid 30s to 50s is that the things that they did to take care of themselves before are not working anymore. Suddenly, their routine just doesn't feel like it's fitting their life. It's not meeting their goals, and they're at a loss. They don't know what to do. They feel like they need to just overhaul everything. And I think that's why today's conversation is just so important. I talk with Heike Yates about our routine in midlife and what really we can do to support where we are now in this current phase that we're in. And it really applies to any time in life, but especially for the midlife woman who is experiencing this and things feel like they're changing. This is absolutely for you. We talk about even just setting boundaries and taking care of yourself again, how important that is, and really how you can best eat and move your body for the phase you're in now. Heike, thank you so much for being with me today.
Oh, Miranda, it's a pleasure being here, and I can't wait to chat with you and your listeners.
Yeah. So first, I'd love to start with your story. You've been in the fitness industry and things for, 40 plus years. And what brought you to where you are now supporting women in midlife?
I think that over the years, every time I always say every 10 years, the people that I talk to have changed, the women I've talked to. And they grew with me as I grew as a coach, as I learned more skills, as my own interests changed. That when, I became a bodybuilder, I was in a completely different space in my head and in my body than I am now. And so I feel every 10 years, there's something that shifts a little bit. And that's when midlife started to we're going through menopause, and I can live that experience with your listeners, my listeners, and my audience. And so I feel they feel a lot more understood than just here is the textbook, here's ChatGPT telling you the strategies you have to do, but somebody who knows what to do when things happen, or is even if I don't know, it's a ear that listens, somebody that's compassionate, somebody that understands where the other person is coming from.
And there's so much medicine in that. That is such a healing process to just have someone who really understands or who is willing to listen and learn and I think it is so rare nowadays for women to really feel seen and heard, especially by, their medical provider. So I think that's a really beautiful thing to be able to offer women, especially during this time. They can feel very confusing and it's sort of a little bit of an upheaval sometimes of what's going on in our body. So,
And intimidating too, because we have so much knowledge at our fingertips. We just hit Google, we hit ChatGPT, and we get bombarded with a lot of information, but we don't really know, is this really what I should be doing? Is this tailored to me, or is this just a broad knowledge that I'm experiencing?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, one of the most common things that I hear from my patients, especially around even their, kind of late 30s, 40s, and 50s, especially, is that suddenly the routine, the things they've been doing to support their health, all of a sudden aren't working. And they feel sort of bombarded with not knowing what to do with their body. Why would you say, like, why do you think that that happens during this time, especially? And you mentioned those 10 years, but especially during this time that is changing.
I hear and I feel that so many women see that their body is letting them down, that their body is just not responding to what has worked all this time. And you could say, okay, if we're talking about 30s and 40s, we're already in perimenopause. Also, when you think about muscle loss, that's also called sarcopenia, starts at the age of 35. So if you look at your body and what worked last week, and you're saying, I'm doing the same strength training routine, but I'm not building the muscles, or I'm not keeping the muscle as much as I have even last week. And this is a slow process. And so as we're looking at ourselves and the things, like I just said, they just don't work. And how do we translate it into now to that new body that almost feels like it's letting us down despite our best efforts?
I think that's such a good point that you're mentioning that things are happening much earlier than most people are expecting them, even in their mid-30s, that muscle loss is going down. And I see that too being a big driver for a lot of the other things people start to notice, like maybe, feeling a little more squishy, feeling like they're gaining weight, even though, muscle loss is sort of the reverse of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like the way how kindly you phrase it with the squishiness, because as I've been going through my career, and I'm 65 now, at that age, my conversations with my clients were all about the belly fat, all about the squishiness. And now, 30 some years later, I'm just like, seriously, we need to stop this conversation. We have to have the conversation about healthy eating, exercise, and really mentally also feeling strong and confident as we go through life. But there's such a focus on, oh my God, I suddenly have a belly. I never had a belly. And my comeback to this is always, ladies, you don't have a flat belly. There is no such thing as a flat belly. Your abdominal muscle is a rounded muscle, especially the rectus abdominis. And you always had a round muscle. You may have been much skinnier. You may have weighed less. Or, your muscles are not as strong as they have been or as pronounced. And it looks more like it. Is it true that most of us gain some weight during the menopausal, perimenopausal phase? Yes, but it has to do with our hormones. It has to do with the high stress and all the things that accumulate at that time. But if you're in your 30s, stop being obsessed about the belly fat. If you're anything obsessed about anything, about your whole health, because that will change things around.
I so agree with you. And the body acceptance and the self-love, I think that is such a big systemic issue still. And that's the symptom that we're seeing of it, people are concerned about how they looked comparing to when they were in their 20s. And people don't like when I tell them, your body's in a completely different place now, especially if you've had kids, if you've been through, big life events, your body's in a different place. And like it or not, I part of me also thinks that there's an evolutionary reason that we start to gain fat also, but it just isn't very socially acceptable, which, that's the piece that, yeah, maybe we need to just get over.
And you go through the years. First, there was Marilyn Monroe, which was very voluptuous, very round. And she was definitely not a size 6, 4, 3, or whatever. She was a size 16. So she was a large woman in our standards. And then they came Twiggy. And everybody starved themselves because everybody wanted to be real thin. And then we're going then back into the next step was we want big booties. So now everybody works their booties. And so as we go through the evolution, I want women to understand that you're not the puzzle that needs to move around. What needs to happen is that you really look at your body realistically and be kind to your body and say, you know what? This is the way I look. My mom looks like this. All her siblings look like this. I'm probably going to look like this as well. And I know from a friend of mine that I've met on Instagram, and she lives in California, and we're talking back and forth. And she says, Heike, can I ask you something? And she's never shown her pictures on her profile. She showed her horse and all kinds of other things. But she says, I'm doing everything right, but I don't see the results. I used to be X, Y, and Z, but now I'm just really having a hard time. I have a hard time recovering. And I'm with these people in the fitness center, and they keep pushing me really hard. And I always feel terrible afterwards. And I still don't see the change. And so we had that conversation about, what does your mama look like? What does the family look like? Do they all look like skinny, spindly people? Or are they more like you? Like, I'm a German. I have a German sturdy body. I will never be a teeny tiny waist or have voluptuous boob or perky butt, but because that's not my DNA. And that was hers as well. And she finally changed the gym. We just, had this conversation on Instagram, and she's like, oh my God, I'm back to Pilates. I'm back doing the strength training that's right for me. And suddenly pictures of her body showed up, and she's gorgeous, and she's definitely not a size 8 or whatever number we're going to want to give it, but she's beautiful. And now she's getting stronger again and not doubting herself about what she looks like.
That's such a beautiful story. I love that. That when we, some people, I think they get confused of, well, I'm just, you know, giving up, or then I'm just, letting myself go. When in reality, it's just changing the narrative to, okay, this is maybe how I look. So how can I love myself currently? How can I continue to support my health? And it's interesting too that you mentioned this, like being in the gym, killing yourself over, these hard workouts and feeling terrible. I see so many women do this during this time and it even backfires. And once they calm it down and they deal with their stress and, build up their resilience, then they actually might lose weight then and, maybe still not be a twig, but feel really good and energetic and just find the right balance for them. I think that's so important.
Yeah, and we're still taught by the fitness industry, and I just talked about this recently as well, is the harder is better. It still is that way. And just with that article that I had read, I tapped on that and I said, listen, they're cluing into too that we do not want. If HIIT workout is your workout, if kickboxing is your thing, please have at it. But look at what the result is. What is the result you're getting that you're hoping to get? Is it realistic? And will you achieve that? And you said with this high intensity workouts, it oftentimes backfires. It because now our body is in a stress response to the exercise, and when we're stressed, we have raised cortisol levels, and that means we're holding on to our belly fat, to our body fat, and like you said, we may actually gain weight because of that stress.
And with that, I think you highlighted beautifully, doing what works best for our body. But is there a certain pattern that you see in midlife for women of a way to approach their energy, their mobility, their recovery when it comes to exercise?
Yeah, I think what we need to start with is setting boundaries with ourselves and with others. And I talk about this in my book, Pursue Your Spark, about as well, is that we have not set boundaries with ourselves. What are we letting happen to ourselves? And what do we let others do to us? And we'll sometimes say, oh, you wouldn't talk to your best friend like this. So why do you talk to yourself like that? And setting boundaries, I think, is a great way to start without feeling like you have to break everything apart, or your whole fitness routine needs to change, or your whole nutrition routine needs to change. It's something that you can do privately, and you don't have to talk to anybody about it, but the delegating things to other people so you're not overwhelmed is a good start. Really looking at what you've taken on already. Is this really something that you need to tackle, which ties then in with perfectionism and people pleasing, which are all a big bucket for us women? We love to do these things. And then we put ourselves last. And so setting boundaries around the people pleasing, the perfectionism, like I said, with yourself and taking on more. And it's okay to not say, hey, you know what? Let me check my schedule. Maybe, and let me get back to you. I'm not sure if I can take this on right now. Or other people who try to convince you that you need to eat this big meal where you really don't want to. And saying, no, I don't need this, and have the freedom and the strength and courage to do that without feeling guilty.
That's so beautiful. I think that is another systemic thing with women, right? This people pleasing and putting themselves last is something that I talk with women so often about, of like, where are you coming into things? Where is your, like, how are you being prioritized? And that is huge. With setting boundaries, you have sort of a tip for that of where to start if it feels first, scary or unfamiliar for some women?
Okay, here comes the internet ready tip. Just say no, right? How hard is this? Saying no is so scary. What if I say no? They will judge me. They will not be my friend anymore. They will not love me as much. Oh my God, they will never ask me again. So saying no and I've said it before, to just say no. Heike just says no. But that's a very scary thing. And I think a simple step is really to just step back when there's a demand on your time or your abilities. just take a step back. You do not have to respond right away, as we tend to often do. We instantly say yes or no, or, oh my God, what did I say? Why did I take this on? But take just a step back without a commitment, without clarifying why you're taking the step back. You're like, I just need a moment.
I think
And
that's a great start. Go ahead.
it's simple and it's not off-putting to anybody else. It's hopefully not making you feel guilty. If you just take that beat, take a beat, take a breath, and then decide in that breath, in that moment, that you will or will not commit to this or allow whatever that is to happen to you. And some of you may have heard from the 5-second theory from Mel Robbins from her book. And she says in her book too, it's like 5 seconds, that's a deep breath in, then you can make a decision.
Yeah. I feel like, nowadays things are so immediate that even just responding to a text message feels like, oh, I've got to get back to them so quickly. But even just like you said, taking a moment, taking a day or two, your friend will still be there, and just say, I want to make sure. And then at least you have to have them time to find if that's in alignment with you, if that really serves your biggest goals, if it is, if you have the energy for it or not. I think that's beautiful. And even too, like rushing into our health and our routines to kind of bring it back there. Someone else is doing Pilates. Okay, so I'm going to do Pilates too. Or someone else is doing this. And we're not stopping to think, well, what do I want to do? What's fun for me? What, is really going to support me in the way that I, want to feel.
Yeah, oftentimes I see it's like, oh, I do it because my friend does, which is a great motivation if you've never done something like
Mhm.
a kickboxing class. You go, okay, I'll try it out. But I agree with you, Miranda, that we just sit for a moment. What is it? I mean, we know what classes are out there and what different things we can do. And maybe you're not the class person. Maybe you're the one who says, I love to go outdoors hiking. That's the thing. But you have to really come to terms with what it is that you want, not what everybody else wants.
Yeah, that's a great reminder. And you talk about like consistency versus intensity, and maybe where do we like how can someone approach that then if they are saying, "Hey, I just like hiking." You know, what then can how should they approach that with that consistency then, or, how much should someone be doing?
Yeah. Consistency and intensity are two completely different buckets, let's call it that way. You can look at consistency as an I'm do something every day, which could be overwhelming for some, but also consistency could be from a different perspective where you say, I do something, but maybe not every day because it doesn't fit my life. It doesn't have to be intense to order to be consistent, but if I do something small enough and I keep doing this over and over, doesn't have to be every day, or it doesn't have to be big every day. You don't have to think that you have to do a big 1 hour class every day in order to reach your health goals. But maybe it's the kitchen counter push-ups, which are my favorite. Everybody
Mhm.
seems to love my kitchen counter push-ups. Kitchen counter push-ups and tricep presses on your kitchen counter is my secret, like in between exercises. But think about that intensity has to match to what your goals are. Consistency matches to what your life goals are. So if I'm intense, what am I getting out of it as opposed to the end result? We're looking for the end result, but is the intensity necessary to reach that end goal? An intense, I don't know if that makes sense. I have so
Mhm.
many things coming in my head right now
That does
that
make sense. Yeah, and what I kind of to like reiterate what I hear you saying then is that consistency is one piece. And it doesn't even have to be every single day or several times a day. And I like how you break that up. I've heard the term exercise snacks, which I love. I think you can do those little kitchen counter push-ups here and there, maybe a few times a day. And it wasn't a formal exercise routine that you went to the gym for, but you worked your muscles. You got exercise, you got movement, and that's important. And then the intensity piece to look at that and maybe dial that up and down for your goals and maybe what's accessible to you on a given day too, like your energy levels and things like that.
Miranda, what comes to mind too is that when we're thinking intensity and not and consistency, the two don't match in the sense of that as we can't bring the two together, it seems, because the mindset is too that, oh, if it's not intense, I don't get enough out of it. So why should I do those consistent exercises that don't seem to amount to much? Shouldn't I instead just go hard, all out, almost every day in order to reach my results? And there's these two camps where I say, no, you don't have to do that hard every day. Mix it in. If it's your jam, go for it. But you still get results with the snacks, the exercise snacks, the things that you can squeeze in easily that do not stress you out, but that benefit in the long run. Because if you would just stop and not do anything because, oh man, I can't make it to my yoga class, Pilates class, and I just don't do anything because I don't think it will amount to anything. You're wrong. Go do those little snacks in between, which may whet your appetite for longer sessions again. Because how often do we get burned out when we do a lot of hard intensity workouts? And I know I'm an ultra marathon runner, or I was an ultra marathon runner and a triathlete. You get burned out when you have to run day after day, mile after mile, just to prove that you can run a marathon or an ultra marathon. You need something in between.
Absolutely. And one thing that I think was that I see with my patients is that there is that all or nothing mentality of, if I'm not getting to the gym, I'm not doing anything. And what I've actually seen in research and things is the most important things are actually just the movement, like the daily movement in our life, especially when it comes to our weight and, our metabolic health.
Yeah.
It's just the movement throughout our day. It's the walking to and from your car. It's going up and down stairs. It's, doing those little movements are actually the most important thing. And then, yes, do the other things on top of that to really, get a little bit more, to build up the intensity, to work your muscles a little bit more. But yeah,
Yeah.
those little pieces can be so powerful, actually.
Oh my God, daily activity is so important. My client just told me today, I do about 7,000 steps a day. And, people look at me, just they probably like they look at you, Miranda, and they go, so what do you think? Will I get a carrot for this? Or will I get, some candy for this? Because I did a good job. And I'm like, great. Because we all have heard about the 10,000 steps, and that's a made up number by the manufacturer. But it could be a good motivation to some when they say, oh, wow, every day I can get 7,000 in. But for the other person who's really sedentary, 3,000 steps is a lot. But getting away from it and moving away from our sitting. And, I always say dance around the kitchen. I have my teacup that I always have with me. I'm going to show you guys. Here's my teacup. And I fill this teacup every hour with water. And I drink ginger turmeric tea. Today I drink mint tea because it's really hot here in Maryland. So I have my cooling tea. But I make myself drink that whole cup within an hour. So I have to have a reason to get up and make more tea. And while I'm up, I walk around and I'm a little nosy. So I look out the window, I check out what my neighbors are doing or see if their mail was here. So I add even a little bit more in without being it on purpose, unintentional.
I love it. Well, it's intentional, but without it having to feel like work, maybe, to just add it in. And I love little things like that. And it's so unique to each person of what's going to be the thing to get you, for example, to drink water, to drink more water. Oh, you've got your great, cup that you love to use. I think that's so great. And it gets you up to move. Little things like that are so powerful and can just be part of your routine. You don't think about it. It's just how you live your life. And suddenly it's easier to be healthy because you've integrated that into your routine. That's beautiful.
Yeah. And I think the more mindful we become with our everyday life, the more we notice these things that we're lagging or that we want to incorporate, that when we sit all day on our desks and our computers, that our neck and shoulders are tight. You can ignore it. But on the other hand, if you notice it, let's do something about that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just listening to our body again, right? It's another kind of relearning part that I see often comes up in this time of life of, oh, right, I don't feel good when I do that thing versus that thing. My back is more sore after I've been sitting all day, something like that. And like, okay, how can I actually listen to my body and work with it then? Do something different.
And then do something that actually is for you and not for somebody else, which I also find in this time of life where people or women actually become empty nesters between their 30s and 40s, depending on when they have their children. And, or you climb the corporate ladder, you are really successful in your business, and you become more and more focused on people around you. And then when you suddenly have a chance, like, oh, one of my kids is in college, I have a little more time. What can I do for myself to be selfish and take care of my health? And I had a beautiful conversation with another woman who will turn 60 this year. And she said, it's a sad story, but a true story. My mom just died. She lived with me for 2 years, and for 2 years, I was her caregiver. And all my needs fell by the wayside. I don't think I've exercised intentionally or at all, other than just taking care of her, taking her to the doctor, doing her errands, hanging out with her. And now that she is dead, and she said, I sound really terrible, and I feel guilty to say that. And she said, but now I have time for me again. I can put myself first. I thought that was so beautiful. And I said, do not feel bad about your mom lived with you. You had 2 beautiful years together. And now the time is for you. It's your time. Start. Just do something.
Well, that's a beautiful story. And I think that is a very common one also of just the caregiving to the children, to the parents, that sandwich generation of taking care of everybody on both sides and having so much more on your plate to finally, quote unquote, be selfish and just take care of yourself. And to take it back to what you said something earlier of how would you talk to your best friend? How would you, how would you actually talk to someone that you love, treating yourself like someone you love? It seems like such a far step for so many of us, which is crazy because it's just taking care of you, filling up your own cup so that you can even show up better for other people too. It's so important.
Yeah, it's like it's the airplane. What do they say? Put the mask on yourself first and then on the person next to you. Same thing with what we need to do as we're in midlife.
Yeah.
We are so easily overrun by the mentality that we are the caregiver, that we are the ones that are giving. We're the ones that only can take care of the kids. We're the only one that can do X, Y, and Z, and we do it the best. Here comes our perfectionism again. And instead of saying, you know what do I need? How do I, like you said, fill my cup? What are the things that I've wanted to do, that I would love to do and fit into my schedule?
Yeah. Yeah. Bringing back that fun again, the play, the joy. I think it's so underrated and just such a beautiful, it's an opportunity during this time when there is maybe more space in the schedule to just be able to go do something fun, revisit your friends and all of that.
And then when you talk to your friends and you have, because sometimes women say, Heike, I don't know. You said do something. I don't know what to do. I'm like, go talk to your peeps. Go talk to your friends. They do stuff too. And maybe you like something, as we said earlier, and you try it out with them. You go to the Pilates class and say, oh, that was kind of nice and it was fun, but I'd rather hike, like we said earlier. But go out to ask your friends and see what they're doing. Tag along for a little bit so you can figure out what it is that you might want. But I always, Miranda, go back to what did you want to do as a kid? What was the most fun? Was it playing with a hula hoop? I have a hula hoop. Get yourself a hula hoop and start hula hooping. It's a heck of a lot of fun. It's a great workout. And I sometimes do it outside. And I'm sure my neighbors are thinking, whoa, there she is again.
But they also are probably thinking maybe on one level, on the other level, they're probably like, that looks fun though. I'd feel embarrassed, but that looks really fun actually. Yeah, I love that. And I think we all do, we have our inner children within us still. And that little girl who loved to hula hoop is still there, or jump rope, or jump on a trampoline. That's one thing that I think is fun with a like rebounder movement that's come back. I'm like, hey, that looks like fun. We all love to jump on trampolines. So I think that's a great reminder. And it doesn't have to necessarily be even just for exercise or some purpose. It could just be for fun, just to get back to that. Love it.
Yeah.
With that, I mean, we've talked about kind of the movement piece. What about food. So that's another piece that I hear from a lot of women of like, I don't even know how to eat anymore in this phase of life. I don't know what to do there. What do you usually tell someone there?
I'm a very simplistic nutrition coach. I go with have protein with every meal. That's really my mantra. And then it depends really on the individual. I mean, some metabolisms are really slow. Other people, as you probably heard too, I just gain weight by looking at a piece of bread or whatever it is. But I would say, watch your portions. We tend to overeat, or we tend to eat more than we actually think we're eating. Many people are, what do we call this? In between eaters, not
Mhm.
grazing, but they have their 3 square meals. And then they start, oh, I need a snack. I need a snack. I need a snack. Although they may not really be hungry, but it has become a habit of just, this is when I eat. And then we're wondering why we're not reaching our strength goals. Let's go with that. But we don't have a lot of energy because we eat a lot of saturated fats or sugar loaded foods that we just don't realize we're actually eating. I always say, do a food diary. Do what you eat. Don't censor it for Heike. Just write down really what it is you're eating. So I actually know what you're eating. Because I don't know if you found this too. People tell me all kinds of things they're eating, but when they're writing it down, it looks completely different. I was like, where's that banana you said you eat every day? It's not here. Or, you drink X amount of water, but you didn't really do that. And also what they deem as healthy foods. I mean, we're all about healthy foods, whole foods. I don't even say that the foods like from the whole food store where everything's super expensive, farmers market and things like that. But you can eat super healthy by really looking at what you need for your energy, what it is what happens when you eat that. And it's really interesting from different countries. Just a little side note. I just came back from Europe. I was in Europe and I had a pretzel because I'm from Bavaria and rolls every day. My body did not change a bit. I come here to the States. I can't even look at a piece of bread or a roll because I have digestive issues. I'm not feeling good. It's a completely different beast. But the woman that comes to me, I say, first off, protein with every meal. There's a lot of vegetarian protein as well. It doesn't have to be chicken or beef for that matter. And then let's look at your diary. Let's look at what it is that you need and what your goal is. Are you wanting to eat for more muscle mass, lean muscle mass, or do you want to eat for energy? Do you want to eat for weight loss, which is very common? We all want to be a little bit 5 pounds less. Everybody wants to have 5 pounds less. And that's okay. But that's what I say. And then I work it very individually with each person and say food allergies. Do you have any digestive issues, which often in midlife, especially around menopause, start as well? And then you have to work your way around it. So I think I can't give them a specific example. I know this is a little bit more general, but I think it may trigger in your listeners to actually look at what they're eating and saying, oh, this is when I ate this. This is what happened with my body. It's like I have microscopic colitis. So I had to stop for a long time eating raw foods because my stomach would be oh my God, it was so painful swelling, digestive issues, diarrhea. And once I learned that this was the case, everything was cooked. Now, 4 years, 5 years later, I can tolerate some raw vegetables. And so, or cheeses, I can't eat any soft cheeses because that end up again in extreme bloating, extreme diarrhea. And so, yes, I have colitis, but other people, when I look at my clients, they all have some kind of a bloating issue. And that's something to really also keep an eye on as you're going through your diary and writing down what it is you eat.
Yeah. Yeah. I think those are such important points they're bringing up that yes, there isn't just one best diet for everyone. And really looking at what you're truly eating, taking the judgment out of it and just seeing what's there and then approaching it in a way of what is your goal? what do you actually want? What brings you joy out of your diet too? Like, what is a non-negotiable? And then taking it from there, I think is a really good starting point. And I think, some things that I see really commonly in a lot of my patients too is eating a lot more calories than they realize. Not that I want anyone to have to micromanage their calorie intake. I don't like people tracking long term, but just being able to see, wow, oh yeah, I'm using a lot of fats. Eating a lot of carbohydrates. Oh, there's actually a lot of more sugar than I realized. Those are some big aha moments, or just portions being larger because, if you're eating at a restaurant or anywhere, the portions are really big. And sometimes we're just constantly overeating and not realizing that. So, yeah.
Yeah. With that said, I'm also coaching and practicing intermittent fasting, which is
Mhm.
not for everybody. And so this is another thing that people say, oh, I practice intermittent fasting. Oh, you're intermittent fast. Oh, I will lose a lot of weight with intermittent fasting. It's not a given. It's
Mhm.
also not for every woman that at every stage in life that fasting is really something that would benefit your health and fitness goals. And we always say in intermittent fasting that the tissues that are broken down in our belly, to keep it simple, are the ones that the bad tissue goes away and we regrew growing and we're getting stronger and we're having more energy because of our fasting process. I found my ideal fasting window. I work with my clients to find theirs, even if it's just an overnight fast where they don't snack at 10 at night. But again, it's not for everybody, and you have to test it out and see, am I the right candidate for this? And you may start out, and one of my clients said, I do not want to be hangry. I do not want to do this. I hate it. And I said, well, how long do you fast? And she said, 20 hours. And I said, when did you ever talk about that you should fast for 20 hours? And she says, I thought it was a good idea. And so she fasted way too long for what it is that she wanted out of it. And it basically backfired in the sense that she said, I will never fast again. This is terrible. And I have now I'm really hungry. And I actually gained weight from fasting. And that's something to keep in mind because intermittent fasting is still hot on the nutrition scale, that it doesn't work for everybody. You have to test it out.
I appreciate you mentioning that because, yeah, that's another one, right? Where they're like, oh, I'm losing weight. Okay, I must need to stop eating as much. And then it can really backfire. Especially, I see it backfiring in a lot of women in the like early perimenopause stage because their stress levels and their cortisol and their body's perception of stress is already so high that just adding in more is just tips the balance in a negative place. But
Yeah.
people who are more regulated are feeling safe in their body, the very simplest thing that's so important. And then they may be, able to do that, have a little more resilience and capacity for it.
Yeah, but also it's when you're thinking about what you eat when you're fasting. You don't eat everything on the planet because you just have this one eating window depending on what plan you choose to follow. And then you overeat. And my son said this too. He said, Mom, I'm going to do intermittent fasting. And then he's like, you know what? I'm actually gaining weight because by the time I get to eat, I am so hungry. I'm eating everything in sight. So he went
Mhm.
back to his 3 meals a day and it works great for him.
Yeah. Yeah. Such an important, you
Yeah.
know, tip for people who are approaching this. Again, seeing just how it works for them, how they feel. And it's not right for everyone.
Yeah, and I also feel we overcomplicate things a lot because we hear so much. We hear, oh, intermittent fasting, or I should do whatever this diet, or this person did this, and whatever it is, we overcomplicate things. Just think where your food comes from. What ideally is on your plate? A protein, a carb, and maybe a vegetable or fruit or whatever, something like that.
Mhm.
Simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. And the less well, I should not say that the less processed, the better, because some foods are actually better when they're processed
Mhm.
without additives and things like that. But what is it that are you eating all your food groups at the stage that is ideal for where you are? So look at your plate. I mean, the food pyramid is upside down now, so we're not going to look at that one. But the old example, a protein, a carb, and then another or one serving of carbs for women as a vegetable, and maybe a potato or rice. And I don't exclude pasta in my world, although many women, especially during that menopausal time, are reacting negatively to pasta. If it's not like a pea pasta, vegetable pasta, but a regular pasta from the box. So see, like we said, like I said earlier, check in with how your body responds.
Yeah. And that's such a golden rule for everything, right? How is it working in your body?
Yeah.
And with that, we mentioned a little bit of, the stress piece of it. Another big piece that I see come up during this time is also sleep being a really big issue. Are there any big takeaways or lessons that you've just seen working with your clients during this time to support sleep, to, navigate that piece of things?
Oh my God. We could talk for hours about the sleep issue because is I don't know any woman when I start my sentence with, "Are you waking up at 3 in the morning as well?" That they, oh my God, yes, you too. Yes, I do that too. So many of us do that. Now, I don't think it gotten worse as I got older. It's pretty much the same. Now you could go back to the regular tips of sleep hygiene: dark room, cold room, blue light or no light at night, nothing shines in your eyes. Do all your good sleep hygiene, which, for instance, for me, cold room does not work. I
Mm.
cannot sleep in a cold room. Or, if you're in menopause, you have cooling pillows or cooling PJs and all these things. It's a combination of everything that you do. But one of the things I think is stress keeps us awake. Even the stress that is not visible on the outside. I mean, if we're listening to the news now, we're stressed. So many of my clients don't even watch the news anymore. I'm like, good. But you hear people talk about it. You're still exposed to that news that you have no control over or very little control over.
Mhm.
How you're responding to different situations. Are you emotionally charged, which increases your stress, and you're responding to somebody maybe doing something wrong, and you're like, oh, you did this wrong again, instead of going, shh, let's calm down. Let's get our nervous system down. Let's take a deep breath and let's respond in a more responsible way that's also healthier for me. Am I creating stress that I think about at night? I don't know so many women that say, man, at night I could write a book because I have all these thoughts, all these ideas, all these things I want to tell people, and that keeps me up. So de-stressing before you go to bed. Really take time to either journal or go for a walk. Not a hard workout that might keep you awake or have you wake up again at night, but think about, what are the stresses that affect me during the day? What stresses can I eliminate? When I wake at night, what can I do? Some people I know listen to a sleep app, which I don't like. I don't like earbuds in my ear, and I wouldn't want to do this to my husband having my phone on. But I do breathing exercises to focus on like 4 breath in, 8 breath out into a rectangle or a square, if that's what somebody can visualize. And recently, you're gonna laugh, and recently I started creating a word. Let's say I think of the word boy. Then I try to find all the words that start with a B until I can't think anymore. And then O, and then Y. And try to visualize those items too. It's like the bee with a ball. Okay, a ball. What could be the next thing? Similar to counting sheep, but a little more
Mhm.
interesting. And that has helped me and some of my clients. I said, just try it. If you're up, you might as well come up with more words for your bananagram game.
Good brain exercise too. I
Right.
love that. I love that. I think it's
But
approachable too for the person who's like, I can't just breathe. I can't turn it off. They're not used to letting their thoughts go. And so I think that's a great thing of like, okay, keep thinking then, but just do it in a very like something that's kind of boring and repetitive. I have a friend who recently was saying that she does long division to go to sleep.
oh my God.
And I was like, truthfully, I'd have to look back and how to even do long division, to be completely honest. It's been so long. But I'm like, great, that's something that's very like it's using your mind, you're thinking about it, but it's just something that's repetitive, boring. I think that's great.
Yep, and I like that too because you're not just thinking, okay, breathe. Are you counting sheep? 1, 2, but you're actively engaged, but in a relaxed way.
Yeah. And I love that you bring up all those daytime stresses. And even as you were saying that, like the boundaries again, if we're crossing our own boundaries, I feel like that's one of those things that comes up at night of like, man, I should have said this. I don't want to have to go to that event. I don't, we're sort of like mad at ourselves frustrated with the situation too. And so even just holding our boundaries and speaking up for ourselves during the day and, you know, having that different approach to, be more regulated and calm down after a situation rather than just like letting it, you know, push down inside of you and then just simmer and then come out at night. I think that's a great tip.
But everybody struggles with the sleep, and that's the best advice I really have. And some people say, okay, you can do some hormone testing on that. If you get to do that, do it. I personally have not experienced it, and I've heard about it and had a guest on my podcast about this. But uh, go with one thing, check it out. If it's not working, go with the next. And it will always, for most of us, will be an issue. Even for my clients who are in their late 80s, they deal with the same thing. So find a strategy, work with that strategy. If that works, stops working, again, talk to your friends. What do they do? Maybe they go to the division next.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes, there are things like our hormones, like our blood sugar that can be worsening things. So that can be a piece too of just, talking with your doctor, making sure there's nothing too major going on there, maybe approaching that. But more often than not, what I see is the daytime things really help. So our blood sugar regulation during the day and our eating patterns helps us at night. Our stress resilience during the day helps us at night. So I think when you're doing those things and taking that approach to listen to your body and find what works best for you, serves you well.
And I think sometimes it's also we keep beating ourselves up that we don't sleep through the night. Stop doing that.
Yeah.
It just happens. As long as you don't stay up for you wake up at 3 and stay up for the rest of the night. If you're up for an hour or two, it's not ideal because it does increase, again, a stress level in our body. But don't then beat yourself up that you didn't sleep again and try to find another solution. Stick with whatever you choose to do for a while. I gave my mom melatonin. My mom is 82. She has sleep problems. She wakes up at 4 every morning. And when I was visiting her just recently, she was up at 2 in the morning. And then she was up for 3, 4, 5 hours. And I said, Mom, have you tried melatonin? And she says, no. I said, okay, here's melatonin. You have to build, and I explained, you have to build it up. It is over time. Your body produces melatonin, but hopefully that will stimulate more melatonin production. And she thought it was a sleeping pill. She said, I took one and nothing happened. I'm like, Mom, you need to, it's not a sleeping pill. You need to build up. So I explained it again. I don't know if she's going to try it again or not, but she thought that she took a pill for a couple of days and nothing happened. So she was done.
Yeah. 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 And I appreciate you bringing that up because I think it's one thing people don't realize that melatonin is a hormone that we're producing that can also decline with age. And that's a big piece of things also that, we can do things. A lot of the sleep hygiene things can help with our melatonin production, but also there are tools like that of, supporting it even further can be a helpful tool.
Yep.
Yeah. And I also think, one other thing that you mentioned of the best ideas coming at 3 a.m. and not stressing about the sleep. I think that's another piece where sometimes just leaning into that a little bit can actually be really helpful. If you're like, if you have a great idea, okay, write it down. Maybe you do get some of your best ideas at night and, don't waste it, write it down, but then also let it release. Think about it in the morning. Don't spend the whole night thinking about that great idea. So yeah. And I feel like that slight lean into it can also just help take the pressure off. Because especially with my patients struggling with long-term insomnia, it becomes this vicious cycle that all of a sudden they're so stressed about sleeping. They're so worried they're not going to sleep that is what's keeping them up the most. So taking a little bit of the pressure off can definitely be helpful too.
Yeah.
Yeah. With that, we touched on a lot of these pieces of our routine and the common things that are coming up. Is there another piece we haven't touched on yet that you really want to make sure that women are aware of during this time?
I think we need to be aware of that there's nothing wrong with us, that we're not broken. There's nothing wrong with us. We don't need to be fixed, but we need to take care of ourselves and not always rely on external gratification during that time of our lives, but look more inward to find that piece that's at that point starts missing. It comes back and it misses again because we're changing, as I said earlier, every 10 years in my mind. But think about it from the perspective of that you really want to focus on yourself and not anybody else, and take that with you forward. And you don't need to be fixed, and you don't need to work out harder, and you do not need to be somebody else. Be you, be the whole you, and look at your new you almost every 10 years, how it needs to shift a little bit, because there's always just a little tweak. We don't need to overhaul our diet completely. We don't need to overhaul our exercise completely. We may have to kick out some people of our lives that are not beneficial for our lives. But on the other hand, what is it that you need right now and in your life, which is the most important thing? And stop trying to fix yourself.
Beautiful. Such a good one to highlight and end on that, I think we all need that reminder that there's nothing wrong with you. You're not doing it all wrong. And trusting in yourself again, and, supporting yourself, finding the best way to support yourself is truly the most important thing. Just have a little fun along the way.
Oh, absolutely. Get that hula out.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to go get myself a hula hoop. That sounds like so much fun. I love it. Well, where can people find you? And you have your new book, Pursue Your Spark, out. Where can people find that and just learn more about you as well?
So you can find my book, my podcast, and everything about me either by Googling Heike Yates, HeikeYates, or Pursue Your Spark. My brand is called Pursue Your Spark. So it's the podcast and the book. And you can find my book on all major book retailers, and it's in a softcover, ebook, and also audiobook for all those of you who can't sit still or don't want to sit still.
Amazing. Well, thank you again so much for taking the time to have this conversation with me. I think this is a very beautiful conversation that we had, and really the things that women need to hear during this time. So I appreciate you sharing that.
My pleasure, Miranda. It absolutely was.